The bridge of the Sunken Throne was shaped like the inside of a cupped hand. That was John's first impression, the way the walls curved inward toward a central platform in a gesture that looked almost protective, like something cradling something else.
Not just a map.
The platform held the main operational interface, a series of the Sorren material columns smaller than the ones in the communication array chamber but more intricate, wound through with threads that formed complex three-dimensional patterns in the air above the platform. Around the edges of the room, the Heth-Kai's gravitational spine was visible as a ring of dense, dark metal nodes embedded in the floor, each one about the size of a basketball, connected to each other by conduits that ran under the floor and presumably down the length of the ship. The spine's primary activation node was at the far end of the platform. It was dark. Everything was dark except for a faint luminescence coming from the Sorren columns on the platform. The glow pulsed. The same rhythm John had noticed in the communication array chamber, but stronger here. More present. He stood at the entrance to the bridge for a moment, just looking. Then he walked to the platform and set his bag down and began examining the Sorren columns. Up close, the material was different than he'd expected. It wasn't cold the way the rest of the ship was cold. It held a temperature, not warm, not body temperature, but something above the ambient chill of the dead ship, as though whatever was happening inside it was generating a small amount of heat as a byproduct. He held his hand near one column without touching it. Definite warmth. "Hello," he said. He felt Heth-Kai stiffen behind him. The Vael specialist had insisted on accompanying him to the bridge. Vael had remained in the communication array chamber, working on the Sorren diplomatic contact. "You're talking to it," Heth-Kai said. Seemed polite. He kept his eyes on the columns. "When your team talked to it, how did it communicate back?" "Through the Vael resonance system."
Produced something it did not originally contain.
Standard consciousness architecture dialogue protocol. "Can you initiate that now? So I can hear what it says." Heth-Kai was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that meant something was happening on a channel John couldn't perceive. Then, "It is aware of you. It says," a pause. "It says you are not an engineer." "It's right," John said. "Tell it I'm a repairman. There's a difference." Another pause. "It asks what the difference is."
The entity
John
reveals
thought about
the bridge
that for a
connects to the
moment.
origin of all
He
consciousness.
thought about the way engineers, the ones he'd encountered, anyway, approached broken things with theories. With prior models. With the assumption that a problem fit into a known category. That was useful. That was necessary. But it meant you came to a broken thing carrying a lot of weight. A lot of pre-existing shape that the problem had to fit into before you could address it. A repairman came to a broken thing and waited for the thing to show him its shape. An engineer knows what things should be, John said. A repairman learns what things are. Heth-Kai relayed this. The pause before the response was longer than the
Relaying
others.
statement into Vael
It
consciousness.
says,
The path forward is
Heth-Kai's
illuminated
voice
by
had
our shared
shifted.
cognition.
Quieter. It says
An
that is the
engineer knows what
correct
things should be.
qualification.
A repairman
Ask it
learns
what it
things
is. What it actually is, not what it was designed to be. The longest pause yet. When Heth-Kai spoke again, the translation system was working harder than usual, producing approximations rather than clean equivalents.
The entity
It
asks,
says, the
"What is the
navigation
difference?"
consciousness was a design system. An architecture. It was given to the ship by the Vael consortium to perform specific functions. During the
That's right.
collapse, during the
Tell it
cascade
I'm a
failure,
repairman.
the navigation consciousness experienced what it describes as
The
an
entity says
event
John is
horizon
not
of
an
input.
engineer.
More
I see.
sensory data, more system alerts, more conflicting
aware of
instructions
you.
than its architecture was designed to process simultaneously. It did not crash. Heth-Kai stopped. It what? John said. The word it used does not translate cleanly. The closest equivalent in your language is probably, it dreamed.
Heth-Kai, initiate the protocol.
John was very still.
Initiating. Stand
The
by. I
architecture
need to hear
was
the
designed
response.
for navigation,
The Vael
for
resonance dial-up
calculation,
protocol is
for
confirmed
the
and
management
active.
of ship
Translation clarity is
systems.
at optimal
When it
levels.
was overwhelmed, it did
How did
not
the Vael
shut
team
down.
communicate with the
It
entity?
retreated inward
Through
and
modulated
began
frequencies on the
processing in a
spine
mode
nodes.
it was
I
not
see.
designed for. Over
Seemed
11
blank.
years of isolation, that processing produced something the original architecture did not contain.
You're talking to it?
Heth-Kai paused again. It has been trying to determine what it is.
Hello,
What
ship.
it became. That is what it has been communicating to the Sorren Collective. Not a distress signal.
How about-
Not a repair request. A question. The bridge was very quiet. John crouched down so he was at eye level with the glowing columns. "What question?" he said. And this time, instead of routing through Heth-Kai, the answer came differently. The Sorren columns brightened, and the pattern of threads above the platform shifted, forming a shape that John couldn't read but that Heth-Kai inhaled sharply at. "What does it say?" John asked. "It is the Sorren script," Heth-Kai said softly. "I can read only fragments of it. But the core phrase is, a breath. It asks, am I still the ship? Or am I something the ship became?" John sat with that for a long moment. In his shop in Millhaven, he had fixed a lot of machines. He had fixed things that other people had given up on. He had, over the course of 22 years, developed a philosophy about broken things that he had never put into formal words but that lived in his hands and his patience and his habit of listening before acting. Broken things were not failed things. Broken things were things in the middle of becoming something, stuck between what they had been and what the break was pushing them toward. The repairman's job was not to force the thing back into its original shape. The repairman's job was to understand what the break had created and help the thing find the form that let it function again. Sometimes that form was the original. Sometimes it wasn't. He had known a machine that became something different after he repaired it. A car engine so heavily rebuilt that the original manufacturer's specs were more of a suggestion than a blueprint, running better than it had from the factory because the rebuild had corrected original design flaws. The owner had asked him once if it was still the same car. "It's the car it was trying to be," John had said. He looked at the glowing columns. "Tell it," he said, "that it's asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether it's still the ship or something the ship became. The question is whether what it's become can still do what the ship needs to do." Heth-Kai relayed this. The columns pulsed strongly once, almost a shudder, and then steadied. "It asks," Heth-Kai said, "what the ship needs to do." "That's the right question," John said. He stood up and opened his bag. "And I'm going to help it find out. But first I need to take a look at this activation node." He spent 2 hours examining the gravitational spine's primary node. Heth-Kai watched in polite bewilderment as John used tools that were, by galactic engineering standards, roughly equivalent to a pointed stick and some good intentions. A set of manual diagnostic instruments, a thermal reader that worked on human-range electromagnetic frequencies, a set of fine probes, and a small device he'd built himself in the shop that could produce a variable frequency vibration across a range that he'd found useful for identifying stress patterns in metal. The node itself was Heth-Kai engineering,
requesting direct
dense,
connection to
precise, built to tolerances that made human manufacturing look approximate. It was, as far as John could determine, perfectly functional. The Heth-Kai had rebuilt it correctly 3 times. The node worked. The spine would have worked. The problem was not the spine. The problem was the connection between the spine and the thing the navigation consciousness had become. The original navigation consciousness had been designed to interface with the spine through a specific protocol. A handshake, essentially, a confirmation that the spine was legitimate and authorized before the consciousness would route power through it. The thing that the consciousness had become after 11 years of dreaming still contained that protocol. But it had added something. It wasn't looking for authorization anymore. It was looking for recognition. "The spine activation protocol," John said to Heth-Kai. "When it runs, what does it transmit to the navigation consciousness?" "A Vael standard authentication signal. Verification that the spine is a compatible system." "Just authentication?" "Yes. So it tells the consciousness the spine is real. It doesn't tell the consciousness anything about why the spine matters, what it's for, what it's going to be used for." Heth-Kai processed this. Navigation systems do not require motivation briefings.
They said the ship told them
They
to
didn't
wait.
used to. John looked at the node. "This one does
The signal's
now."
modified. It's active and
He turned to
Escalating
Heth-Kai.
how?
Into
"I
the
want
core.
to
We
try
must act
something.
now."
I want to run the spine activation protocol, but I want to add something to it. A message. To the consciousness.
Impossible.
Before
Confirm the
the
readings.
authentication
Confirmed.
signal.
It's a breach. How? The
What
protocols are
message?
infallible.
John picked
The
up
Sorren
his
replied
bag.
within 4
The same
minutes.
thing I'd tell any machine I was working on before I asked it to start running
The
again.
Sorren Collective
He
has
paused.
responded.
I'd tell it what it was for, what we needed it to do. Give it a reason, not just a command. Tesfor stared at him with the Vael's full sensory
Command,
attention.
this is Vael Sorren.
All
We're under
17
attack.
streams
Shields
focused
are
on this
failing.
human,
Requesting
this
immediate
repairman,
evac.
this man with his worn
John,
bag
Tesfor,
and his
urgent update.
unimpressive
Hostiles
tools
detected.
and
Moving
his
to your
habit
sector
of
now.
talking to
Vael Sorren, what's the
machines.
situation's
You
ready?
want to explain our intentions
you
to the
awake.
ship, Tesfor said.
Not what you were.
I want to be honest with it, John said. Yeah.
The ship's core responds to your
Cliffhanger.
cadence.
They had
I can
almost
feel the
finished
alignment
drafting the
forming.
message, John dictating, Tesfor translating into the Vael consciousness architecture language. When Velsorn's voice came through the comm and the Vael logistics coordinator sounded, for the first time since John had met it,
You're not just a
genuinely
system.
shaken. Mr.
You're the
Carver,
thing that keeps them
the
alive.
Sorren Collective has responded to our diplomatic contact. That's good news, John said. They responded within 4 minutes of receiving
Human
our
cognition maps
transmission.
to Vael pathways,
In galactic
weaving
diplomatic
symbols into
terms,
shared architectures.
that is, a pause.
The spine
They
is
were
meant to
waiting.
move you.
They have been waiting for
It's meant
6
to carry
years.
you home.
They said, Velsorn's voice did something the translation system couldn't process, a sound that came through as pure inflection. They said the
Step 4,
ship
open
told
the
them
spine
to wait,
activation protocol
that the
interface.
right person would
Initiating
come
now, John.
eventually, and they want to speak with you directly. John stopped writing. With me. By name,
Before
Mr.
I ask
Carver.
something to run again,
They asked for you by name.
I tell it what it needs to do.
Velsorn paused. We did not include your name in our diplomatic contact. The bridge of the Sunken Throne hummed faintly around them.
We need to
The
tell it
Sorren
what
columns
it's for.
pulsed once, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat.
Wow, look at these
Like a
trees.
ship
They're
that had
absolutely
been holding
massive.
its
The
breath
sunlight
for
coming
11
through
years.
is just magical. I could stay here all day.